the delay. So you can take over.
Okay. Abhishek Vidate had a concern that the numbers had dropped from about 80 and 90 to about 70 yesterday. So the concern is whether it's a change in time or whether the topic was not interesting yesterday, or my understanding is maybe I don't know how much a value addition everyone is getting, and I hope that every lecture for everyone who's there is something new you're taking back. That is something which I hope is happening, because you're all from a variety of backgrounds. Some of you have finished with post-graduation, some of you have done law or doing law. So I hope all categories are taken care of. If something is not covered, please ask in the questions related to this, and I will attempt to cover that as well. There was a question asked about, before we asked, yesterday there was this concern about what can we do when the government refuses to change or bend laws, and one of the persons said a young lady was told the petitions don't work. Today I have sent an article just 20 minutes before the session, so maybe Abhishek has not been able to send it to all of you. The Karnataka High Court has struck down the decision of the Wildlife Board of giving permission in one reserve. And the Karnataka High Court has clearly said, because there was a lot of breach of procedure, that there was not much difference between, nothing has changed between the early decision where the Wildlife Board had said that a project should not go through. And then in this particular meeting, 2 or 3 ministers addressed the board. And the court took exception and said that ministers are not members of the Wildlife Board, so they have no business to be present. Why am I telling all of this? One, I believe that there is a lot of room for optimism. Okay? Things may not happen immediately, things can go wrong, but there are also these instances where the rule of law is being applied. And this is something which I said on the first day. A good democracy is somewhere where people can be ruled and can rule. So people can rule is where informed decisions are taken for the sake of the political process, and people who can be ruled is all of us, including bureaucrats, ministers, citizens, are subject to the rule of law, that one law applies to all of us. So if that we can keep putting pressure, maybe that will happen. Today in some groups I also sent an article on this person who was director of Amnesty International in India, Akar Patel, about his dissent and the kind of struggles he's had. And one of my students from now who will be in TY said, yes, dissent is possible, but sometimes consequences can be very bad. So I definitely agree that consequences, if we have to struggle, and she said that consequences can be managed if we have a cushion. So if you are privileged, if you are backing, if you have support, then a lot is possible. So that is something which I want us to understand. Okay. Also, yesterday we talked about locusts, and Priyanjan has put a message saying that there has been a locust, attack in Jodhpur. So therefore, we are seeing this process of what we discussed yesterday. So that's a matter of concern. So maybe we'll discuss it towards the end again. But the point I want to make is the political process is a product of all of us doing our bit. One question was there about somebody wanting to know about the Indian Ocean. Are there books and articles? In my opinion, the best book at the moment is a book by Michael Pearson, Pearson. The title is Indian Ocean. And the book is very systematically done. Of course, there are a lot of other titles. Okay. I also talked about this book called Ocean Churn, okay, by Sanyal, which that book is slightly problematic, but it'll kind of expand your understanding. But The book by Michael Pearson is something which is worth a read. So any of you are interested in knowing more about the Indian Ocean, should get a copy. I'm not sure whether PDF this thing is available, format is available, but if you can get a copy, Michael Pearson's book. There are books by Brodell, there are quite a few others, but I personally believe that Michael Pearson's book is a good book to start with, because it covers everything from the geographical, scientific to history and politics and history in various phases, the various groups involved. So it's quite a fascinating read. So for that's something which you can look at. So getting back to what our today's topic is about, this whole issue of right to privacy. Where do we place right to privacy? Okay. Why do we need the right to privacy? Okay. The belief is that if we as citizens have to be our best selves, if we as citizens must be able to contribute to the socio-political process, then we should be protected from unnecessary use of power against us, unnecessary intrusion or encroachment by the state or society. Okay. So the issue is that as individuals, to be able to be functioning citizens, okay, the power of the state, the power of social groups must be restricted. And the first instance where a constitution had a certain kind of right to privacy was the American Constitution. So if you look at the Fourth Amendment said that various kinds of encroachment, etc., is not, it's not permissible. So that is something which was the first statement where there is this right to privacy. The second place where the right to privacy is mentioned is in Article 12 of the UDHR, okay? Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. So Article 12 says that in terms of it, it also talks about, defines a little more about the right to privacy. Okay? Your personal space, your correspondence, and a variety of things. So these are domestic and international. In the US, there's also a Right to Privacy Act. In the Indian context, the right to privacy is a part of the right to life, or Article 21. We don't have a separate right to privacy. And on August 24th, 2017, the Supreme Court, okay, in a unanimous judgment, a 9-judge bench, said the right to privacy is a fundamental right as a part of the right to life. Okay. And if you want to understand the democratic process, if you look at right from the 17th century, okay, even individuals like Thomas Hobbes, he was a political philosopher who believed that there is a need for a strong state. And the only exception he made is that the state cannot encroach upon the right to life. So right to life is something which is extremely important. And what does right to life protect? Right to life is connected with, it is right to life and liberty. Right to life is that the state cannot take away our life, okay, without due process. The state cannot deny us of a liberty. And over a period of time, the right to life has been expanded in many ways. So I will look at that before I look at the privacy part. Some of you are doing law, some of you have done who have done political science. I'm sure we are familiar with a very important case called the Maneka Gandhi case, 1978. And the Maneka Gandhi case is important because the context is very important. Her husband, Sanjay Gandhi, and her mother-in-law were accused of misuse of power during emergency, and there was a judicial inquiry and a case going on against them. At that time, she wanted to leave the country. Okay. And those days, everybody who applied for permission had to get what is called immigration clearance. So her passport was impounded because she was the wife of Sanjay Gandhi. And the Supreme Court said that the right to life cannot be denied except on grounds of reason, reasonableness, and natural justice or fairness. I want all of you to understand this. Reason is national decision. Second, reasonable. What is reasonable? Is there sufficient valid reasons for somebody's right to privacy or right to life being taken away? Okay. Like the Supreme Court in 1997 in the PUCL versus Government of India case said that unless there's a public emergency, okay, and in that public emergency also it said it must be legitimate, it must be proportional. So all these are what I call procedural restrictions and guidelines, so that government agencies do not cross that limit where the exercise of power can become abusive. So in terms of it should be fair, it should be on rational principles, and it should be reasonable. There should be proportion. So the principle of proportionality. Okay, the seriousness of what of the act should be in terms of what is a threat or accusation or what, that should be proportional. So therefore, that's one part I want all of you to look at in terms of to understand. So when you say the right to life is also includes the right against arbitrary arrest. Okay. What does that mean? That the government cannot arrest me on various grounds, even on grounds where there's an emergency. So if you look at, there was this famous case in 1976, okay, called the, I think, K.K. Shukla versus ADM Jabalpur. Okay. It was during emergency. The majority opinion said that during emergency, habeas corpus or the right against arbitrary arrest, the safeguards can be removed. One judge, Justice Khanna, said even in emergency it can be removed. So one of the judges there at that time, okay, was somebody who went on to become the Chief Justice later, Chandrachud. His son, in the 2017 judgment, overturned his father's judgment and said that the right to life, which includes the right to privacy, cannot be suspended even in an emergency. Okay. So this is something I want all of us to be able to understand properly. Okay. Why is this important? Because in India, we also have a lot of special laws in the name of national security, in the name of various things. So when these decisions are taken under these acts, a lot of normal laws get, suppressed or subordinated to that interest. And all over the world, after September 11, 2001, and this concern about the threat from security, a lot of personal laws, personal liberties, including the right to privacy, has been limited. Okay, so that is something which I want us to understand. So, so when you say the right to privacy, it's a part of the right to life. Now, before I look at Indian cases, universally, there are 7 dimensions of what we call privacy. The first dimension is the body. What does that mean? That my skin can't be punctured for a blood test, okay? Or I cannot be injected with, okay, so-called truth tests, this thing and other things, without my consent, because you are invading my body, okay, which is a part. So when right to life includes the safety of my body. So any kind of medical intervention, okay, should be according to consent. That's something which is a part of the right to privacy, which often in most places, because we don't really respect the rule of law, okay, it happens all the time, and a lot of us don't even know that privacy can include this right to body. Second is correspondence. What does correspondence include? Any kind of communication, which also means that the state cannot listen to what we're talking. So this whole question of eavesdropping. Okay? So when you look at the 1997 case, it is a case of wiretapping. Okay? Can the government tap our phones? Okay? And the Supreme Court clearly said, unless it's a public emergency. So therefore, the second part of this is in terms of this whole issue of correspondence. The third dimension of privacy is the privacy of data. So privacy of data is in terms of my documents, my photographs, okay, a lot of my social media thing, etc., cannot really be encroached into without my permission. Okay. So therefore, that is something which is, so all my documents, okay, my hard disk, all of that is protected because it is my data. Okay. And unless it's a public emergency, I have the right to control over it. So of course they say that in terms of, if you can do data encryption, maybe it's protected, but data encryption has a lot of problems. Okay, it can only safeguard certain things in only certain conditions. So for that itself is not a problem, but that is something which a lot of us don't know about. And also, if you look at it in the name of these special laws against terrorism and public whatever. So if you look at whenever people are arrested, their computers, everything is also taken. So all of that is actually a breach of privacy. And that's something we need to understand. We need to, maybe those of you who are doing law, please read upon it. And what can we do to kind of educate the rest of us in terms of what should we understand about the privacy of data. Of course, in India, there is a data protection law. There's a bill. But again, a lot of our bills are heavily skewed in favor of government. What does that mean? It makes a lot of exception for governments. So in that sense, it gives the government and other agencies a lot of power. So I really don't know how much it will really protect that. But this privacy of data is something which is very important. The next part is what we call privacy of finance. So my bank transaction, a lot of that is something which is, it is my money, my account, my choice. And therefore, a lot of that has to protect. Again, but after, as I said, the moment you say terrorism is a threat, okay, and the government can claim that a lot of my money is going for terror funding or whatever else. So a lot of times there are these exceptions which are used, okay, to probe, to monitor, to examine, which again is a part of privacy. The next part is what we call privacy of identity. Actually, in a lot of spaces which we think are not really public, CCTV cameras, a lot of that, okay, is also intrusion into privacy. But again, in the name of security, a lot of these things are not really taken into consideration. So sometimes, I as a teacher, in some classrooms, can the college put a camera, okay, to listen to what I'm talking or to listen to what students are talking? It should not happen. Okay. Sure, can the college, like if you look at Wilson College, there are cameras in the staff room. Is that allowed? If you look at really the right to privacy, it is not allowed because that's our space. It is in terms of where we are sitting, having lunch, chatting, and it's like eavesdropping. So when you're talking about this whole identity in terms of can the government keep a tab on where all I'm going, whom I'm meeting, it's something where my identity, I can be anonymously meeting anybody unless I'm a threat to public security. But without that, you cannot do that. Then the whole thing is about privacy of location. Okay. I can choose to be where I want in terms of, like, if I'm following the law, without everybody knowing or the government knowing where I am. And the last is the privacy of territory. What is privacy of territory? Is my space, my home. All of it without a proper warrant which is followed, these three principles, due process of law, cannot be searched. So even if you're traveling by car, mere suspicion, can the police ask me to show everything? Is there a warrant? Is there a suspicion? What is the process? So a lot of times we are not familiar with what we can, and in Indian context, most of us are ignorant. And maybe people like the police sometimes may not even be aware there's something called the right to privacy. And because a lot of us are scared of anything to do with the government and the state, we normally don't question them. And maybe because they have power at that time, they can coerce us into accepting. And I always remember, I had this very interesting encounter. This is about nearly 15 years ago. I was traveling from Delhi to Dehradun. I got down at Delhi and I took a taxi. And we were traveling somewhere in around 2 o'clock, somewhere before Dehradun. I think the a police guy stopped the vehicle and he said, show documents. The guy, he showed everything. And all the documents were in place. But the guy wanted money. He said, where is your first aid box? And the driver asked him, oh, kya hota hai? So he made him pay 150 rupees. Because a lot of time in terms of whether not having first aid or in the car, are these mandatory things? Can we be punished or can we be threatened with punishment? So please try and find out, okay, what is it mandate. Again, when you come to things like Arogya Setu, okay, the app, okay, the Prime Minister and a lot of the government has said it's not mandatory, but government organizations, private organizations are making it compulsory. And many people are saying India is possibly the first liberal democracy where something like an app where to do contact tracing is being become mandatory. So it's mandatory by default because we don't know. And if I wanted to, so today if I want to fly during this COVID time, and at the airport, they may not let me fly if I don't have this app. Therefore, what they're doing is they're forcing me to have something. So therefore, a lot of us need to understand this whole issue of what does normally privacy cover? Okay. So where I can choose to be traced, to be tracked. Okay. All right, I can choose not to. But the general fear of coercion, which is common across, often makes a lot of us agree to a lot of things which may not be, in terms, what should I say, legitimate. So before we start, talk about it, please understand the principles of privacy. But even this is inadequate. Okay. Now, in terms of, now a lot of people are developing trackers which can track your emotions.
So just a minute, there is a discussion on the chat box whereby you have mentioned about the point of privacy of territory and location.
Please, I can't hear you. Just 1 minute. I can't hear you. Yeah.
So there is a point in the chat box whereby they have asked what is the distinction between privacy of location and privacy of territory.
Yeah. See, location is in terms of like tomorrow if I want to take a holiday, okay, and I don't want anybody to know my location because I just want to cut off from everybody. Okay. Or I want to, so therefore I'm not breaking the law, but I'm going somewhere so I need space away from people. So that is something which is my location. So where I'm traveling in the city, where I'm traveling in the country, it's not by default to be known by other people. Territory is my territory. What is my territory? My possessions, my car, my two-wheeler, my house. All of us is territory. All of this is territory. That is the space which belongs to me. Location is about mobility. In terms of when I choose to move somewhere, like in terms of, I may want to go to a particular kind of shop and I don't want people to know. What I shop, what I buy is my business. If it is a legitimate shop, if it's a legitimate thing, why should anyone know what is it that I'm eating or what is it that I want to have? What is the kind of stuff I'm buying? That is something which is my choice. So therefore, to track where I'm going or to track my purchases, all of that is something which is an invasion into my privacy. Okay. So therefore, those are things which, so I hope the distinction between location and territory is clear. Territory is your personal space in terms of your house, your possessions, okay, your vehicle, whatever else, all of that is your bags. That's your territory. That's your possession. Okay. So if anybody has to check, there must be a proper warrant, a proper reason for that. Random things cannot happen. Of course, now in the name of security, all this screening and all of that, some people can raise the question. Of course, when it comes to security, a lot of a concern, because it's public safety, a lot of our concerns may be overridden. But I would like all of you to read a little more to see what kind of safeguards we can build into this. Because in the name of security, a lot of basic, protection from invasion into privacy is taken away. Any other, sorry, I'm glad you made this intervention. Are there anything which I explained which was not clear?
No, you can carry on. You may carry on.
Okay. So, therefore, in terms of why is, okay, now we are concerned because when we say the right to privacy, because of the explosion of social media. Because in terms of various kinds of ways, people are able to track a lot of things, this whole issue of big data, the government following us, all of that in terms of that we can be manipulated. So there's a lot of issues with that. But when you look at the law, let us look at in terms of what are the I want to take up actually 3 cases. Or 4 cases. The first case, which I mentioned, is 1997 Supreme Court, People's Union for Civil Liberties versus Union of India. Okay. PUCL and PUDR are very important civil society groups, which, among other things, also use PIL, public interest litigation, where they file petitions, where they think there is this whole breach of law. And in that, this is the whole thing about telephone surveillance. The topic is in terms of, are we entering a surveillance state? It's not just entering. The surveillance state is something which is happening, continues to happen all the time. In spite of this judgment, it's and the Supreme Court is very clear. Unless it is a public emergency, there's a continuous breach of this. Okay? Even if you look at things like some of you are familiar 2007-8. Are you familiar with the Radia tapes, the telecom scandal? Please check the Radia tapes and Radia scandal. Radia was a public relations professional. Okay. So some of our conversations with corporate people, all of that was tapped, and whether that could have been used as evidence, and the Supreme Court clearly said that where you do this kind of surveillance, those messages have to be destroyed, because you are basically encroaching into this whole surveillance. And if you look at it, governments can the screen sharing be stopped? Okay, let me continue. So when you are talking about this government, like in 2012, when there was a change in government in Himachal Pradesh, the next government found out there were about 1,300 cases of phone tapping. So when you're talking about not 1 or 2, we're talking about large numbers of individuals. So this whole, because the government can control or has access to the telecommunication and things like that, and therefore this is something which can be done. And as late as 2019 in Karnataka, there was this issue of phone tapping. So all of that is a matter of concern. And in the judgment, the Supreme Court talked about a particular provision of the Indian Telegraph Act, subsection 2 of provision 5. We clearly said that it applies only for public emergency. Okay? So this was the first instance where there was this thing in the context of surveillance, where the court said that surveillance can't be done. Then, of course, this whole issue of the 2017 judgment. Okay, this is the possible most important judgment in terms of the right to privacy. And it said that a lot of things like Udhr cannot be made mandatory for bank accounts and all of that. But even today, if you look at a lot of banks for KYC, know your customer, they demand it. And because a lot of us are not well informed, so maybe all of us should get copies of these judgments, especially the 2017, get the main things. Keep a copy of it with you, take a small printout of the important things, where Udhr cannot be made mandatory. One of the things, even in 2018, the Supreme Court said that Udhr is not necessarily encroachment of the right to privacy, because Udhr ensures that, the details ensures that the poorest can be reached with a lot of public help. But it also says where it cannot be made mandatory. So if you can understand the omissions and the inclusions of Udhr, I think that is something which you are making yourself informed. Remember what I said yesterday? A lot of us are indifferent because of sheer ignorance. So maybe we should start looking at important Supreme Court judgments and things like that, which are laying down clear guidelines. Also, there's another fairly recent case. It's a case of, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the case. It's a judgment given by the Mumbai High Court. It is a case of, I think, Vineet Kumar versus CBI. Okay. Let me just. Okay. I don't know where I put that. That was basically interesting whether the CBI, again, the Bombay High Court said that unless the public emergency, even the CBI cannot really do recording and taping and all of that. Also, in the 1997 judgment, please look at the kind of codification the Supreme Court did of Rule 419A of the Indian Telegraph Act, Indian Telegraph Rules of 1951, which was amended in 2007. Also, please look at the IT Act, because the Vineet Kumar judgment also, I think, refers to that. That is a 2019, October 2019 case, fairly recent. Okay. So it says that, it also says that economic reasons does not necessarily fall into public emergency. And therefore, this is something which, so look at the Vineet Kumar Bombay High Court judgment, look at the 1997 Supreme Court judgment, and of course, the 2017 judgment, which is possibly the most important as far as the right to privacy as a fundamental right. Okay. Okay, let me take a few questions and then maybe if there's anything I'll tie up. Okay, just 1 minute, please. See, I want all of you to also please read up about a lot of concerns about apps like Arogya Setu, because it is something which uses Bluetooth and others, the kind of breaches which can take place, the security issues. Okay, so there's a lot of concerns about it. The government is trying to fix some of them, but there are a lot of interesting articles by a French hacker. There are other people who have done some work. Maybe you should read up on this, because all of us should be better informed about every single law as well as apps which the government has or other people have. I remember in one session some time back, somebody said that all our phones, do we regularly clean it of cookies? Because a lot of messages and everything is there. So are we constantly cleaning our phones, okay, to make sure that various kinds of bugs and cookies are removed so that we are protecting our own data? Because sometimes there is a lot of breach by private players and so many ways in which. So please learn about it. Maybe I may not be the best person to talk about it. There are many more people who are better informed about things like your data protection. They will be able to talk maybe better about this. I am not really well informed about this. This is not my area of concern. My excuse is, of course, that I'm technologically challenged. Some of you may say that's not an excuse, but anyway, since I'm older, I'm allowed. But all of you are young, cannot have such an excuse. Please learn about everything you can about your data protection. Also, please find out if you can get a copy of the data privacy bill and see if you can read up and see whether you can be better informed. And therefore, and again, as I said, yesterday I talked about, last evening I talked about this whole issue of us being gladiators. Please find out, one thing you can do is, I'm sure all of us can find out the contact email IDs and what numbers of our MPs, MLAs, MPs at least, 542. If lots of people write to them and say, we are concerned about this, at least some of them will raise a question when the discussion starts. Okay? So let us at least, ensure that we are guiding decision making in a certain direction which is helpful to us. Okay? So this kind of, it doesn't take too much of effort. I'm sure all of us can write letters, and writing letters is a right which each citizen has, because we have elected, or our constituency is elected an MP or an MLA, and therefore we can write to them, because they then see. The problem also is because a lot of laws are passed in such haste. A lot of MPs themselves are not very familiar, because there's not enough time given to study in detail. I also said very few laws are sent to a select committee, so the discussion on these laws itself is also limited. I know in one case, I don't remember, one particular bill, the minister who had introduced himself did not understand many parts of the bill, because sometimes these bills are developed by bureaucrats, and it's very technical. So if you can nudge your MPs to be familiar, so find out what are the bills, especially this data privacy thing, which is a proposed law. Maybe all of us, we are becoming a little more participative citizens. Okay. I'll stop here. I'll take up questions.
Yeah.
Okay, before that, those of you who who chose this topic for discussion in this, have I covered all the important points? Nosheen, Suhasini, Shruti, Sridevu, all of you were a part of the discussion. Just check if I've covered all the points. If there's anything which is not covered, then I'll cover that.
Maybe we'll try to take them through the questions, like, as we already have like 5-6 questions which can get, like, we can get answers through them.
Sure.
So the first question is by Christine. When you say public emergency, could you specify what types of emergencies come under this?
Okay, see, that is one of the biggest problem in India, maybe in elsewhere also. Sometimes the Supreme Court and the Constitution often doesn't define it. What's a public emergency? Something which threatens the security of the country. Okay. So when there is a war or whatever else, or when there is a lot of complete breakdown of order. So in some cases, the government may decide to monitor us to make sure that violence is controlled. So public emergency is something which is, there is a actual extensive violence, internal or external, something which is leading to breakdown of law. Everything else cannot be a public emergency. Even riots and other things, the Supreme Court has clearly said these are not emergencies. You should look at, there is a very interesting case, 1994, the Bombay case. So even for imposition of President's rule, the Supreme Court clearly said that law and order issues cannot be taken as a reason for imposing President's rule. So, of course, if the problem is public emergency, not clearly good. And again, words like public good. See, some of it again enters the realm of morality. Whether in terms of, where, see, like if you look at the Assam Public Safety Act. The Assam Public Safety Act can take anything in terms of reference to anything to do with leftist ideology itself as provocation. Okay. If you look at the Chhattisgarh Public Safety Act, if you look at Jammu Kashmir Public Safety Act, all these acts have gives sweeping powers for any kind of thing. So this whole public safety and public emergency are laws which gives the government extra powers. I don't know how many of you are familiar with a former justice called Justice Hosbet Suresh. I've heard him, he said in a meeting, he said that our existing laws are good enough. We don't need all these extra laws to check terrorism and all of this, because all of that just gives the state extra power to override safeguards. So a lot of us also don't question them, because when it comes to security, when the government says, oh, the nation is a threat, then even our basic freedoms are willing to forego. So we will need to be better informed about, of course, please read up more, but as I said, it's not very clearly defined. But the Supreme Court keeps saying in cases that what doesn't constitute a public emergency. And therefore, it says in normal cases, the term public emergency cannot be used. Yeah.
So the next part that we would want you to address is that whether UAPA comes under the ambit of right to privacy and surveillance, and how do you address that?
Well, see, all special laws provide exceptions for most rights. Okay. So if you look at everybody arrested under UAPA, especially if you look at all the people arrested under the Elgar Parishad thing, everything about their data, they were, and the courts have not been really taking those cases seriously. So when it comes, so therefore the problem is that because we have created this whole phobia about terror, and we can call anything as terror. And see now suddenly in terms of, even in a popular vocabulary, we have introduced this idea of urban Naxal. So urban Naxal is somebody who's seen as trying to overthrow the state. A lot of people who belong to left ideology and people who don't belong to the left ideology sometimes are just questioning misuse of power or questioning policies which they think are not in the public interest. And any democracy must allow that question. And also, see, it is not just this current government. So if you, one of the persons who've been arrested in the Elgar Parishad case is this person called Arun Ferreira. Arun Ferreira has been in jail much earlier. And he was also called, you must read his book, Colors of the Cage. He talks about his 4-year struggle, okay, because he was banded and all kinds of charges he put. So he was, in one case, accused of, participating in some Naxal attack when he was in jail. So all of these are problems in terms of, because the police can fabricate, the police can do a lot of things, because the police claims to have found letters and all of that. But these are things again which are breach of privacy. But because UAPA is a special law to safeguard Indian security, it often has, it is something which allows for misuse of power. Yeah.
The next question is by Mahmood.
By?
Mahmood.
Okay.
Google Assistants on our phones are listening 24/7 into 365 and recording our activities and sending it to Google. Your comments?
That's why I said, young people, please find out ways to protect, safeguard yourself. Okay. No, see, anybody who's monitoring our choices and decisions is basically invading privacy. Okay. So basically, that is something which, because all these social media and apps have become such a way of life, they have not really, we are not aware of the extent to which there is this invasion of privacy. Okay. And they may justify, because a lot of time they have institutes, they have given access to other things. See, again, when we talk about this Arbitrary Arrest again, who can access this data? There's no clear, if you look at the health app of Singapore, only the health ministry can. And also when you talk about things like Arogya Setu, etc., there must be a clear time frame. So you are looking at contact tracing in the context of this particular thing, because it's COVID and therefore there's spread in this area. Therefore, we want to make sure that you are not the reason for spreading. But again, that cannot continue forever. Things have to be time bound. You also have to decide who will have access to your data. Okay. What's the guarantee it will not be shared with other people? Government agencies or private individuals or marketers or whoever. So all of this, there is not enough clarity. Okay. And of course, all these guys, of course, I'm doing a lot of things that they should not be doing. Googles and whoever else. Okay. But as I said, I am not really an expert on that technical aspects. You all find out more about it, please. Yeah.
Next question is by Parikshit Dokwal. In connection with the development of cybercrime, should the surveillance of citizens by National Security Service be developed, expanded, and increased? Should the government be allowed to get an access to the information available online?
No, see, that's what I'm saying. See, what is the reason for courts? The courts are there to check whether somebody is actually a threat. Is there evidence of that threat? And then the court will allow you to check certain things within procedure, with procedural guarantees, that you're not exceeding what you're supposed to. I'll give you one example of, there was, this name Gilani is a very common name in Kashmir. There were two Gilanis who were arrested after the parliament attack. One was, of course, was a professor. The other Gilani was somebody who was arrested for trying to share state secrets, or compromise on state secrets. And then the court found that he had just downloaded information which was available on an open military website. So therefore, in that sense, that he has access to information which is in the public domain. So if he's accessing it, and then, so therefore I say, are the agencies actually following the rules? Are they examining their own? So when you are, so therefore for me, it is too big, what should I say, a threat, giving excessive power to any government agency. Okay. I forget the name of the NGO. This was a very interesting NGO in Uttarakhand in 2005 or 6, which was where the founders were arrested for doing a survey, and they were arrested under the National Security Act. And because, and the kind of charges, and they were in jail for nearly 6 months before they had access to lawyers and whatever else. But, the misuse of power by national agency is huge. And sometimes we are also, as I said, this phobia allows the government to encroach. Yeah, this is my answer. Yeah.
Next question is by Zubin Joseph. Yeah. In the case of location and territory, so don't you feel all major applications are breaching it? What can be done?
First, if we are better informed, see, in everything, because individuals knowing doesn't make a difference. The government can easily ignore us. Okay. But can we do a lot of awareness programs? Okay. Of lot, you see, awareness program can be done at so many levels. So if you can find and share and have conversations. I remember there is one Marathi writer, Dalit writer, I met many years ago. When I met him with students, he said he wanted to have a movement in Maharashtra where every citizen knows about the Constitution. He said a lot of us don't know about Constitution, safeguards, rights, and therefore we don't question the government. Similarly, about this data issue, the right to privacy, please find out now what is the kind of things. Is it always necessary? What kind of places we should be questioning? But even before we question, can we start having conversations? Can we find out enough? Can we have more informed conversations? Can we have conversations with people in other countries? Can we find out about laws elsewhere? Okay. If you can find out about the Privacy Act in the US, find out if there's a similar act somewhere, read up for yourself. And some of you here are lawyers and potential lawyers. You're going to be our foot soldiers. Please do something. I'm sure you will be better informed than I am. So please do that. Yeah.
Omkar Dhakal, please ask your question.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening, Omkar.
Sir, in the course of your talk, you mentioned about this analogy, about privacy in classrooms and staff rooms. So, one of the biggest counter argument against this, as a student, as a law student, I feel is that such places are public places, and I hope we all remember this incident which happened in 2017, the Ryan International School issue which had happened.
See, just 1 minute. Ryan International School was about, when I say in the ground, in other places, I'm talking about spaces where teachers are having conversations, That's not a public. Public places, yes, you need corridors, offices. These are things where people are engaging with the administration. But there are spaces where conversations happen. So you can have security, yes, physical security, which you need to have, so therefore doors are open. But listening into conversation is a problem. Okay. So if you have proper security in corridors, you know who's going where. So if somebody is being coerced, all that you follow. But in a classroom, if I am going to say something like suppose I am a teacher in Wilson College, and I say that do you know your rights and you should challenge Wilson College, what if they suspend me tomorrow? Because I'm legitimately saying something which, according to Indian law, okay, all colleges breach. You read the prospectus of your college. They say you can't talk to the press. That's freedom of expression being taken away. So a lot of times, people can breach. So when you say public space, that's what I want to know. Public spaces in terms of how is the teacher teaching in a class in terms of really a public space, because that's again a conversation in terms of that, because then you are snooping on everybody. Yes, if I am as a teacher, I am using abuses or I am disrespecting students, somebody can record it. If there's evidence, then of course, then it's a good idea then to have a camera in my class. When you're collecting evidence, because you already have a reason to snoop, because I am a person who is breaching my brief of what a teacher can do. Because I find this a problem, because this whole, in the name of security, in terms of, yes, what is then personal space? As a teacher of history or a teacher of philosophy or political science or whatever, can I question? Like if you look at Wilson College, it's been established missionaries, but there was one teacher, Dr. Ukherjee. He used to say that in his class he used to be critical of religion and he used to promote atheism. Okay. But that's his space as a philosopher, as a philosophy teacher. He can promote arguments which he believes is looking at one aspect of reality. And he was teaching much from much before independence, and he said that the college never interfered. So can the college interfere in things which I am saying? That if I am saying that there are a lot of rules in Wilson College which are favorable to teachers. Teachers don't wear I-card. Teacher can have no time limit in library. So students raise the question: are they in terms of what are they doing? Are they trying to defy authority, or are they asking for fairness? So that's my concern. Maybe you have reasons why you think it's an issue, but I'm stating my issue. Sorry, I interrupted your question. Please finish your question, Omkar.
No, sir, that exactly was my question. How do we still justify the idea of privacy in such places?
No,
So,
that's what I'm saying. Privacy is what my thoughts, my opinions, okay, unless they are against what we call established norms, okay, cannot be used against me. Will become, suppose I am like if you go to North Korea, okay, if you're critical of the president, you can be arrested. Okay. Or North Korea, somebody was shot dead because when the former president died, somebody didn't cry enough. So my emotions is my space, so I don't want to cry. So once you start saying that you can snoop on people's conversations is private. Unless there's evidence that I'm inciting people to violence, then you take action, but you must have evidence. Yeah, we
yes,
can
sir.
agree. We can agree to disagree, Omkar. You may have, I have no issue with your position, but I'm just stating because I'm very worried over a period of time. This whole space for personal expression, etc., is going to be constricted increasingly. Because I also have a problem when a lot of times colleges and schools they get into students' chat groups and then they rusticate students. I think schools and colleges need to take a chill pill here. What is this here? If people make fun of teachers, people make that's okay, no? Why are we taking ourselves so seriously? We're all becoming this very intolerant group. I'm sure all of you here who are my students, many of you not. I'm sure have abused me because you thought I was being whatever. Can I record that and say, oh my God, these people hate me and I must take action against them? Anyway, sorry. Question.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
There's a question by Noel Pereira, which has been addressed in the course of the discussion, but I repeat it. UAPA is being used against a lot of people by the government, especially anti-CAA protesters. What are your views on that, sir?
So that's why I'm saying this whole dissent against any law, okay, is something which we need to, there's a separate topic on that. Not just look at UAPA. I said, look at public safety acts in so many states of India. Okay. And in states like Assam, it's far more stringent than this kind of public protests. So therefore, we need to, all of us need to pay the question. Also, if you look at it sometime, the Supreme Court also is not really very empathetic with these special laws. Please look at the 1990, I think it's 1998, the Supreme Court judgment on the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. And you will find in the judgment, parts of the judgment are directly lifted from the government position. So is the Supreme Court really listening? Because the armed forces are supposed to be at the borders. Can we use them against our own citizens? Can we have better implementation of regular laws so that we don't need these special laws? Yeah, sorry.
The next question is by Antra. So, under right to privacy, should euthanasia be counted as legal?
See, I don't know whether euthanasia comes under the right to privacy yet in India, but when you're talking about this whole issue of the body and things like that, some countries have possibly recognized it as in terms of they allow for assistance. Those choices, they said it's your choice. So, starting with Holland, and before that, I think one of the provinces in Australia, they all said it's a personal choice. But that we need to have discussion. That also depends on the social and ethical context of the country. Okay. In India, the Supreme Court has refused to accept it because there have been at least 2 or 3 people from Kerala who said that they want to end their life, not as suicide, but in terms of the fact that they believe that they want to go with dignity while they are in full charge of the faculties. So therefore, that is something they should be allowed. But the Supreme Court has not accepted it. So in India, that is still an issue. So that maybe we will need to have more conversations on this.
Next question is by Anvesha. The argument that's difficult to counter is if we give apps the permissions to access contacts, media location, and message, and we also grant permission to share that information with third party, then my data is already being used. Then why can't government use that data for security purpose?
First of all, if you're not conscious of privacy, why should we give the government the power? Why should we give anybody the power? If you're allowing, see, we should also be conscious. If a lot of people protest against what these apps and other people are doing, maybe they'll also be a little more careful, no? Because you need to have more conversation about what these private operators are doing. My thing is that the government can misuse a lot of that and press charges where there may be no charges. Okay. So therefore, there are a lot of things which are private, which should remain private. And I'm not just saying, if the various apps and all these companies are doing it, we also need to challenge them. And in many countries, people are doing that. So maybe we should look at that. So just because somebody we allow, does it because the government has much greater power than a private player. A private player may manipulate choices here, the government can misuse its power because they have the access to coercive power.
Rohit Patil, please ask your question.
Hello, sir.
Hello, yeah.
Sir, as we are talking about public safety through our right to privacy, I just wanted to ask about as in within these 2 years, the Right to Information Act has been tempered a lot, and the officials of Right to Information Act officials have been moved to salaried employed from government. It was a separate body earlier. So how does that affect our personal privacy at that level? Because right to information is considered to be one of our most basic democratic fundamental right. So how does that affect our privacy concerns? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so no, your question is very, very important. But before I look at the dilution of the act, it's also unfortunate that the judiciary does not allow itself to come under the ambit of the right to privacy, of the right to information. Because judiciary should also be open, why they delay, how many cases are delayed, what kind of, basic questions also judiciary does not allow. So sometimes the judiciary also tries to, sees itself as an institution about the ambit of the right to information, which is unfortunate. Second, what you say is very, very important, because even in 2005, a lot of people felt that the right to information itself was not strong enough, because there's so many exceptions, and there are blocks. Because see, even if you look at sometimes, can we question the nature of army purchases? Sometimes we need to know the economics, because sometimes maybe there is a lot of corruption, there's a lot of problems. Because in the name of security, even that conversation is not allowed. And the point which you raise, yes, the fact that the independence of the information commissioners is now being tampered, which is, I think, is a huge blow to the right to information, which is extremely unfortunate. Okay, so it's very scary. And also, see, the problem is the right to information also needs to be strengthened, because I've seen colleges, I've seen a lot of individuals, manipulate data, and there's no way to cross-check. Okay, so therefore, I think there is still more struggle left for us to fight against maybe stronger laws. As you said, this whole the right to information is a part of making governments accountable, which is fundamental to any democracy, which unfortunately a lot of us are not familiar. As I said, last thing what I said, this whole apathy, indifference, whether it was a fear or because we are preoccupied with ourselves. But it's important. I'm very glad you asked this question, and I hope everybody who's on this group today also thinks about this, and also we push this. Can we push policymakers to make it stronger? As I said, if there is enough critical mass, I'm sure there can be some change. Because even in 2005, the government didn't do it willingly. It was because there was a popular movement, a lot of people pushed for it. Okay. Yes, thank you for the question, and I hope we can do something to reverse this dilution. Yeah.
So the next question is by Parth Khandewal. What are your views on the debate of privacy versus convenience?
I don't know if I understand the question.
Parth, if you're there, would you like to explain your question?
Yeah, please.
Parth?
Yeah, hi, am I audible?
Yes.
All right. So the fact that, when all these companies, they track your movements, the things you look online, the things you want to buy and stuff like that, they justify it by saying that this is adding, because when our algorithms or our softwares understand you better as a person, it can help us make your life more convenient. So there's this debate. There was this opinion column which I read on the New York Times, where the person spoke about how her Google Maps kept on asking, "Do you grant this app permission to track your location all the time?" Saying that it will make it more convenient. But then she was against it, because she said, "I would rather not have convenience that give up my privacy." What are your views in that sense on the debate of privacy versus convenience?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is very important, because that's why I'm saying, people who want to enter our minds, want to know our minds, will always justify it. So convenience is a justification. See, some kind of data in terms of what I'm buying, etc. is okay. But if it's also trying to enter my mind, I'm not sure it's a good idea. That's why I said when I talked about the 7 dimensions of privacy, it doesn't cover emotional tracking, stress tracking. See, emotion is knowing my feelings. That's very private, and that is something which I don't think should be given to anyone in terms of that. So, also there's more than governments, corporates also are trying to manipulate us. So therefore, I think this whole convenience argument sometimes is a sheer problem, because if it also, I may not want companies to know a lot of why and what I'm doing. I must also have the freedom to choose, because I don't know whether many of you are too young. In 1954, there was a book called Hidden Persuaders, which said that how advertising manipulates our minds. So sometimes the way these algorithms work also are sometimes also manipulating our mind, pushing us into certain choices, okay? Because they know how our mind works, and therefore they are using all these sweet spots to make us buy or to make some choices. So I think all of us will need to understand this better, and maybe we need to read more, read more. I think, but I don't accept the argument of convenience, because see, as I said, okay, forget Google. Sometimes, at least my generation, I don't know about your generation, parents used to punish us very harshly. And then they would say, we are doing it for your good. So it was justified, I don't know, but there is a philosopher who said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So please think about it. That's also very important. Because everybody who misuses the power always says, we are doing it for your good. Teachers who punish harshly sometimes also say, it pains me more than it pains you, which is rubbish. So I don't buy this convenient argument by anybody, whether it's a teacher or a app or anybody.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Next question is by Adhikar. Up to what extent can a personal privacy extend?
Frankly, I don't know. But I think it should be, because what happens is that this whole issue of moral policing. Okay. So when I say, can your parents monitor your language? Many of us love using 4-letter words. Okay. If they think is wrong and whatever, you think you should allow them to check what you're saying all the time. When I was young, if I use a word which my grandmother thought was not good, she would say, wash your mouth with soap water. So when you say privacy, I think it's extremely important, because my personal space is important. Unless there's evidence I'm using this personal space to instigate violence, incite violence, okay, I'm doing things which are obviously a threat to public order. The right to privacy must be kept as extremely important. This is my strong belief. Yeah. How as extensive as possible. Because when you say to what extent, there's no answer. No? How do you define it? It's not to a 20%, 40%, 100%. We don't know. It will be contextual. But the more, what should I say, vigilant we are to counter people in terms of various things. Okay. See, again, an interesting thing. If I'm a teacher, of course, I don't drink alcohol. After college hours, can I drink alcohol with my students? Can a college monitor that and punish me? It's my thing outside. The ethics of it you can keep discussing. But that's why I'm saying there is this whole thing. We will all enter all kinds of what should I say, moral policing, which I am strictly against. Yeah. Okay.
The next question is by a user who identifies as yours help. How much more accurate is it to provide this personal information on a variety of websites, and how to check if this website can really help you?
Question, that's a personal choice. First of all, whether we should be, we must have the choice of what we want to share. Okay? Do you think this is something which should be in the public domain? It's your choice. Of course, now, unfortunately, in the current social media generation, there's nothing any private anymore. We share all sometimes our most intimate thing on Instagram and Facebook and whatever else. But that should be a matter of choice. Do I really want to share some information? And if that information is not really in terms of affecting my contribution, my decision making, whether I want to share that information or not is completely personal. Okay? And that we should exercise a choice over that. So that every person should decide. Okay, what is it that we want to share?
Our next question is by Payushi Ghosh. As we know, South Korea and Singapore have managed to contain COVID cases, and one of the ways by which they did was by using the app, which helps them get notified about COVID positive individuals at a 100-meter distance. On a similar note, sir, why do you think Arogya Setu app hasn't been as successful as it has been in other countries?
See, one is if you look at Singapore, Singapore is it's a very small country. The population of Singapore is how much? It is, I think, 1/4 the population of Mumbai. It's a small country, things are easy. Second, it's also a strong guided democracy. Of course, even there are safeguards, and the access is only to public health, and they have all of that. And both South Korea and Singapore acted much earlier. Okay. Today I was talking to a former colleague of mine who came from Europe, and she was very clear. She thought India had done a great job, because she said, compared to how Europe behaved, she said we are too critical of India, but she said that countries like Belgium, etc., did impose when we imposed, and their intervention was possibly not as good as ours. So it is something which we need to see from. Maybe we need to do a little more comparative study to understand how effective or not. That will be again in terms of the kind of information we are able to get on various dimensions. So in India, again, in terms of the penetration of, what percentage of people have smartphones, how many people can actually download it. So that percentage, given our uneven access to information technology, it's not possible to cover everybody. Okay. So therefore, there are a lot of factors which are problematic in India. So therefore, that's why maybe we're not able to do as well as South Korea or Singapore.
The next question is by Abhishek Vidhate. How much of our legislatures and law enforcement indifference towards right to privacy is a reflection of our disregard of individual privacy as a culture? And there is another similar question by Suhasini Nair. Is the proper understanding of privacy within society a precursor to it being fully recognized by the government?
Definitely. See, at homes, we don't really respect privacy. In terms of, the whole question was first started when talked about, I was reading somewhere, said that, our personal diaries, okay, it's our personal space. Nobody else should read it. I'm saying at homes, parents and anybody, if they don't think it's such a big deal. They say, what do you have to hide? So what Suhasini is saying is true, that in terms of our socially and culturally, okay, I don't think we really think privacy is a big deal. Okay. So that will be definitely a reflection. Second, when you say privacy, certain kind of privacy is something which can be inconvenient. But certain encroachment of privacy can threaten our freedom, can threaten our choices. So therefore, being better informed is important. Of course, see, no government, I'm saying no government, actually respects freedom too much. If you look at the First Amendment, 1951, I think, it's the first one which started putting restrictions on the freedom of expression. Even the first government did not do away with sedition law. In an independent country, why should there be sedition law? So in that sense, that to expect people who make laws to be more sensitive or bureaucrats to be more sensitive, I think is unrealistic. They will not be, because for them, control is important. And for control, they will definitely in spaces. So therefore, that's something. So both the points are very important, that culturally and socially we don't believe in the right to privacy. And maybe a lot of policymakers don't think it's important. And also a lot of us in positions of power are very uncomfortable with being accountable. Am I, as a teacher, always be willing to be accountable? I don't know. So that is the important question in terms of this whole accountability issue is something which you don't think is important. And that's why the question which Rohit raised about the right to. So when this dilution happened, was there any protest? There should have been a lot of, uproar and things like that. There was no murmur also. So these are things which a lot of us, as I said, this whole, which I mentioned last evening, this whole indifference, because it doesn't really concern us or we've not thought about it. So all of us will need to widen our scope of thinking of what is our space. Because finally it will affect us. If you remember that very famous poem about this Catholic priest in Germany, he said, when they came for the communists, I didn't say anything because I was not a communist. When they came for the trade unionists, I didn't say anything because I was not a trade unionist. When they came for the Jews, I didn't say anything because I was not a Jew. And then he goes on and he said, when they came for me, there's nobody left to say anything. So all of us, it will affect all of us at some point of time. So being conscious and therefore conscious of our rights and taking a stand, and I think it's very important. And this is something I really appreciate all of you who decided this particular topic, and all of you are on this group. I really enjoy these sessions because the questions are so interesting. And thank you very much, all of you, for organizing this, and for all participants who've been asking very important questions, because many of these things, when I was preparing, didn't occur to me. And if you didn't ask these questions, maybe they will not be covered. And because we're covering it, I hope all of us are also thinking about these issues.
Just an announcement, we'll be sharing the link for the feedback form of this session, and also a registration link to the WhatsApp group, where we will be sharing the reading materials about anything concerning this lecture series, and also the YouTube links to the videos. So please do register yourself and fill in the feedback form. The next question is by Shrinik. There is a big difference in the ways different countries like China and Singapore do contact tracing. This is a similar question. Would you?
Yeah. I see. When you say contact tracing is important because to contain. If you look at the example of Kerala, in India, Kerala is a good example of being reasonably good contact tracing. And I'm not sure whether there's been too much of breach of this. But in China, and China especially, there's been a lot of concern that a lot of individual rights, a lot of the government has been often misusing data. So there's concern. So in dictatorships, we don't know when it can turn into something which can go against you. Also, when you talk about something like COVID, increasingly we are, there is a lot of stigma attached because of fear. And that can be used against people, and people can be locked up, separated. So we need to be a little cautious about this in terms of contact tracing is important. Can we figure out better ways to do it? And as I said, within a time frame. When you see that the thing is, are these messages, are these things also being dismantled? Because it should be for a certain purpose. It cannot really monitor our movement all the time. So that's a important thing. Yeah.
Next question, Priyanjali. What can we do as civilians to protest and make a difference in the system regarding people who have been arrested unfairly under draconian UAPA?
See, the first thing is in terms of, one is a lot of people don't question because the government claims that they are a threat to national security. First, if you can inform, educate people better. Second, as I said, no protest will have an impact unless there is what we call a critical mass, unless sufficient numbers of people come out and do something, no government will respond. Like even if you look at a farmer's concern, unless the numbers are sufficiently large and they think it will affect their votes and their support base, governments will not respond. And things like the arrest of some individuals, for a large number of citizens in India, is not a matter of concern. Okay? If you look at the number of people in terms of this lady Bharatbaj and others, most people don't even know what they do. So if you're not even aware of who's getting arrested, why are they getting arrested, what are the charges? So the best way is, how can we increase awareness levels? Also, as I said, because a lot of education does not really keep in touch with current events. Because I think all students from first year must have a well thought out paper on current issues and events, where they discuss what's happening at the moment across economics, politics, and society. Okay. So people need to be aware, because as you, what you say is very important. So many people are in jail for reasons which are trivial, and there's no justice. So unless a lot more people are informed, I don't think anything will happen. Yeah.
Next question is by Sujit. With regard to Kashmir, hasn't there been a consistent breach of privacy, AFSPA being one, the abrogation of Article 370 being the other, and that could threaten the privacy of territories, specifically then the internet shutdown adding on to the dilemma?
Not true. See, if you look at the Armed Forces Special Power Act you mentioned, but there was the first implemented. The act was first used in Manipur and Assam. 58 was in Manipur and Mizoram and other places. Kashmir also since the 90s it's been used. So whenever there any kind of special thing, the armed forces can enter anybody's house, can check anything, can take away anything, all of this. So therefore any kind of special laws are a complete, is a huge threat to the right to information. Also in terms of where the police was monitoring all communication for some time in the mobile internet in Kashmir. So all of that is intrusion into private space. But then that's why I said, I always say, the important thing, how do you frame the reference or the argument? Kashmir, you say, Kashmir, what's happening in Kashmir is a threat to Indian freedom, Indian democracy, that territory. Then a lot of us stop questioning. Okay. So that has been true. And second, if you look at places like Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, they're not interested. So we don't know what happens there. We have never asked questions. We don't know. So sometimes you should go and you should read the local newspapers. You'll find the amount of violence, the amount of deaths, the misuse of these things. So Kashmir is, of course, is since August 5th, it's been terrible, but similar things happen elsewhere. Or what happens in places like, if you go to places like Dantewada in Chhattisgarh, at one time, the kind of, in the name of containing Naxalism. So wherever there are these challenges to state authority, whether violent or non-violent, there will be a lot of this threat to Article 21. Article 21, when I say the right to life, so therefore right to privacy is embedded in the right to life. So all of you read up as much as you can on the right to life. So right to life is the primary right in any kind of political system. The government exists to safeguard our lives. And lives include a lot of things, because if you have to live with dignity, it means many things, including the right to privacy.
The next question is by Dheeraj Borkar. Good evening, sir. What is your opinion about the government's privacy in context to right to privacy?
See, any public authority does not have the right to privacy unless it's a matter of real national security, where anything shared can threaten our security. But if you look at India, there is a 1925 Act called the Official Secrets Act. Under the Official Secrets Act, whichever the government puts under Official Secrets Act, we can't get any information. So under that, what is the issue? Like all nuclear power plants come under the Official Secrets Act. Therefore, I won't even know if there's a leak or whatever in a nuclear power plant. I can't find out because that is seen as something which is a part of the official domain, and therefore you can't. So why is this a problem? In 2004, there was this tsunami, and the tsunami hit was in the area where Kalpakam is. Kalpakam is a nuclear reactor near Mamallapuram, Mahabalipuram. The other areas, it was hit. So we don't know what is the kind of damage and what is the kind of leakage, radiation. We have no idea. So use of Official Secrets Act blocks any kind of information seeking. Again, it's a colonial era act which the government has continued because it's convenient for them. Okay? So, like judiciary also does not allow questioning. Why should it? Judiciary is the part. I mean, judiciary is not above the law. It's a creation of the Constitution. So therefore, yes, I don't have a right to know about the private life of ministers or anybody else. Okay, as their personal life is not my business. But whatever decisions they are taking as for the country, okay, if it affects me, I need to know why it has happened. If there's an exception, if there's a misuse, whatever else, I need to know the rationale. So when you say transparency in government, it's a very important element of democracy. And transparency should be there for everything, including judicial decisions. Okay. So I don't know whether I've answered your question, but I don't know whether I fully understood your question in terms of. Okay. If I'm not understood, please ask again. I will explain.
There are two similar questions again by Prabhav Chaturvedi and Adnan. Taking boys' locker room case in consideration, do you think breach of privacy is justified even if it was meant for entertainment as claimed by the members of that group? And by Adnan framed as, in the case of boys' locker room, will it be considered a breach of privacy or does it help better to identify such harmful conversations?
See, unless a conversation is something which is a threat to other people and you have evidence, collect evidence. But in the name of that, to take control of common rooms, locker rooms and all that, in my opinion, is wrong. Okay? People must have, it is your space. Okay? And a lot of conversation which I can manipulate, misuse. Okay? See, like simple conversations, that like suppose in class a teacher has humiliated you or you think the teacher is humiliated. You go out and say, I want to kill that teacher. Okay. Are you expressing intent to kill or is just an expression? So sometimes when you are taking these things too much, you're also then in terms of, you can selectively take certain statements and use it against a person. Okay. If people are conspiring and somebody hears it and then you report it and you record it, then that's an okay thing. Then you can figure out ways to do it without, see this whole thing in terms of generalizing and having a blanket intervention is for me a problem. Yeah.
The next question is by Parikshit Dokwal. What are the dangers and benefits of mass surveillance systems and data profiling done by the companies and government? To sum up my question, though a crime-free society is perfect and exists only in illusion according to public domain or cyber law.
I said, see, I have answered this earlier also. I'm saying, see, cyber laws are important. You can see if there is, cyber laws will act on the basis of complaints. If somebody is misusing the right to the information technologies, then that you can track that because there is evidence. But to have surveillance of everybody is wrong, because you can selectively use the data against that person, give it to somebody else. So any kind of general surveillance, I am again. That's why I said, see, even if you look at the 1997 Supreme Court judgment, the Supreme Court judgment said that any kind of surveillance of even small groups of people can only be done in a public emergency, or there's definite evidence that that person is acting against public order. So therefore, the law is very clear. And even if you look at the 2019 Bombay High Court judgment, in the case of Vineet Kumar versus CBI, please read the judgment. Okay. See, the Supreme Court, I'm very happy with these kind of interventions. Though I'm very critical of many of the other Supreme Court interventions, but at least there is hope still. Yeah.
Mohammed, please ask your question.
All right. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, I don't know, sir, whether it is a question or it's a comment to the whole discussion that has taken place today. But in light of the opinion that you just expressed a while ago, where you said that privacy should be protected to the largest extent possible, I was just thinking about the feminist discourse, particularly I think it's the third wave of feminist thought, or fourth wave of feminist thought, where they say that there's nothing called private life. Nothing is private, everything is public. And once you start making it private, you start marginalizing women in the society. So, what are your opinions on that?
Yeah. See, the first thing when I say right to privacy, for me, it's a part of human dignity. Okay? Privacy is also part of, in terms of human agency. I, as a person, must be allowed to think differently, challenge the system, whatever else. So, in that sense, that yes, I mean, I can understand that privacy can be used as privilege, and therefore it can be used to marginalize. But I'm just saying, if we respect the privacy of all individuals, and again, in terms of that is defined by access and all the other factors, and it is an important part of human dignity. Okay. In that sense, yes, we need to figure out how we can do it. In an unequal society, privacy can often be used against the less equal. So that those are problems. So we should try and correct those problems instead of saying that, because individuals must have personal space. Because in any situation where there are power equations, any contrary position can be suppressed by those in power. Okay. So unless I can, so I must be allowed to have control over my thoughts, emotions. That's private space. I don't know whether I've responded correctly, but this is my thinking. Maybe we will need to read more. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
For all those of you who are asking about references for further reading, we'll be sharing it on the WhatsApp group. So get yourself registered and added on that WhatsApp group. Omkar, please ask your question.
Sir,
Yeah.
while we are talking about data and privacy, this reminds me of Mukesh Ambani's statement where he says that data is the new oil, and it shouldn't be shared with these multinational companies. So even in India, when we talk about data, we don't see any institutions in place whatsoever to control the data and to regulate the use of it. So what do you think? I mean, what could be the ways? What could be the ways to track this? I mean, there is no discussion about this tracking the data where it comes to the domestic territory of India. Also, if you could just put some light on cryptocurrencies, because it has been going and then there is no regulation on that as well. So if you could please put some light on this.
See, two things. One is, I'm not sure the example of Mukesh Ambani, because Mukesh Ambani also does a lot of things which are problematic. So a lot of these powerful industrialists want protection from what they think is competition from multinationals. So therefore, I would take his comment with a pinch of salt. So when you say data, data is very important for accountability. So we need to lay down clear guidelines. What are the data which have to be in the public domain? Okay, and that has to be monitored to ensure that people are following that. Second, cryptocurrency is something again which is still in its infancy. There's a lot of areas where things are gray, but a lot of people also find that cryptocurrencies may be also useful to protect financial privacy. Okay. But as I said, it's a very early stage, and in a lot of areas there are gray areas, there are problems. So the cryptocurrency itself, of course, in most places is now not legal. So we should maybe read up more, and if some of us who are interested in law, maybe figure out how to regulate cryptocurrency from being misused. But that we should discuss when it really becomes more of a reality. Because as I said, understanding of that is still limited. It's in infancy, and there is still a lot of glitches to be worked out there. Okay. But maybe, and again, I must confess, my understanding of cryptocurrencies is not as good as yours. So I don't know whether I can really satisfy your question. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So we have crossed our time long back. So do you want to take the questions?
Are there any questions which are different and which have not been answered?
There is one regarding dark web, so that is different in that sense. Yeah.
What's the question about dark web?
While the dark web is said to be 0.03% of the whole internet, to events occurring there can have severe implications, right from illegal arms trade to identity theft. A lot of people are strangers to what the dark web is, and others are usually misinformed. Do you think that we should, in this age where the internet technology is heavily integrated into our lives, we should make an effort towards understanding this section of the internet?
Of course, I mean, see, anything where it can be manipulated by a few and very illegal activities. I'm very happy with this question because my own understanding of dark web is limited. But it's very good if some of you have better information on dark web, please pass the information to Abhishek Vidate. He could share it on the group so everybody else can read, because I think, yes, we need to know a lot more about these dimensions of the internet and the World Wide Web, because we need to protect ourselves against forces which can undermine societies, polities. So anything which allows people to use it for purposes other than what is in the public good needs to be understood better.
I think we can wrap up with this question. If anyone has more questions, you can connect with us and we can take it tomorrow before beginning the session. So, yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.